Senate Bill 224, Senators Fenberg and Gardner, Representative Tipper, concerning the creation of the Donor-Conceived Persons and Families of Donor-Conceived Persons Protection Act.
What reports is this? Do we have any report? There's a report on this, right?
Yes, SVMA and appropriations.
No.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 224 along with the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee report and the Appropriations Committee report.
To the SVMA Committee report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the State Affairs Committee, we adopted a couple of amendments. They were relatively minor and largely technical in nature.
Motion is the adoption of the SVMA Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The SVMA Committee report is adopted. To the Appropriations Committee report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Appropriations Committee did what they do and appropriated funding for the bill.
Motion is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Appropriations Committee report is adopted. To the bill, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 224 is a bill that's been a long time in the making. It's been something I've been working on all session and worked with folks from all aspects of, I guess you could call it the industry or the larger community when it comes to fertility issues in those who use third-party gametes to be able to start a family. This is an incredibly important issue for those who use those resources. It's also an incredibly important issue for the children that result from those opportunities. And this is a bill that begins to regulate the industry in a way that's appropriate, in a way that protects the well-being and interests of donor-conceived people, but also doing it in a way that hopefully strikes the right balance so we don't limit options for families when they are trying to start a family. And it's an incredibly important issue. Happy to answer questions and have a discussion, but if this has been out there for a little while and I think folks have heard about it and discussed it, so I will leave it there. And we do have a couple of amendments, but for now I'll pass it off to my co-prime.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you. I want to thank the President for asking me to be a co-prime on this bill and actually for the large amount of work that primarily he has done. My interest in this issue arose because of the large number of issues with respect to fertility clinics that have happened around the country and over on the Western Slope. It turns out that this is an industry that has very little actual regulation. And I think for many, many years there was a thinking that that was just fine. And then mass genetic testing by everyone sending their swab into 23andMe, Ancestry, and all of the others revealed that there had been a great deal of abuse in this area. We are getting a handle on it. This bill is part of that. It is not particularly far-reaching in regulation. It is a minimal amount of regulation, both to respect those who are adults that are donor-conceived, as well as to limit the numbers of donations from a single donor. This is important because in a place like Grand Junction and servicing the Western Slope, we found that when there was fertility clinic fraud, people were going to high school with a half-sibling that they didn't even know was a half-sibling. The potential there is phenomenal. This bill actually earned mention of the President and I in the same sentence in a favorable way by John Caldera in a Gazette editorial. So that really is indicative of the fact that this is not a partisan bill in any way. This is a bill that we as a General Assembly need to take a look at and protect the citizens of Colorado and ensure their rights are protected. And I thank the President and ask for an aye vote.
In further discussion, the motion is the adoption. There's an amendment at the desk.
Amendment at the desk.
Will the clerk please read L4?
Amendment L4 by
President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L4.
To the amendment, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an amendment that actually does what we thought we did in committee already, which just removes assisted reproduction technology and replaces it with the words assisted reproduction.
Motion is the adoption of L4. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. L4 is adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read L?
Amendment L005.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L5.
To the amendment, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I just want to make sure folks know this is a very long amendment. It is 11 pages. So if folks need to take some time to read it over, I'm okay with that, and we can do a few other bills in the meantime, but I just want to have full disclosure as this is a long amendment. It is largely technical, although there are a couple of substantive changes. It adds a sentence to the legislative declaration to sort of justify why there's a family limit in the bill, but mostly what it does is it slightly changes the definitions. So we had a catch-all definition for a gamete bank, matching agency, IVF clinic, et cetera, as one definition. We broke it out because folks wanted more clarity on which requirements and pieces would actually be the responsibility of which party along the chain of events that happen in some of these procedures. So that is why it is such a long amendment, because that definition change meant it had to be changed on sometimes 3 or 4 times on one page in the bill, and so that resulted in a very long amendment. There are a few other things, though, that this amendment does do, largely clarifying and largely upon request from either gamete banks or IVF facilities, et cetera. And what it does is the introduced bill had a family limit of 10 families. This bill, this amendment increases that to 25 families. I still think that is a very large number, but it is more in line with current industry practice, and I still think it is a step forward to codify that practice and require tracking so that we actually know these gamete banks are meeting the standards they say they already are meeting. There are a few other changes like that, but there is nothing substantial that would increase regulation. If anything, it provides more flexibility and clarity for the industry and folks that use these services. It also decreases the fines and the fees that can be applied to these industries as well. So urge and I vote on L5.
Motion to adopt. Senator Gardner.
Thank you. Well, just for the record, the president is a far more flexible and amenable person than I, because I think 25 is way too high, but it is what it takes sometimes to get these things done. And fines and penalties, that too is something that I think the president has shown a great deal of reasonableness on. So contrary to my other experiences on other things, and I jest, this is a very reasonable amendment, and I ask for an aye vote.
Motion is adoption of L5. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. L5 is adopted. Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of 224. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 224 is adopted. Will the clerk please read the title of Senate Bill 179?
Senate Bill 179.